Let's go, folks! We're continuing to rank hero packs based solely on the deck building cards in the pack. Today, we're going to be looking at the Justice hero packs. Again, we're excluding the big box expansions. We're just looking at the hero packs themselves. And so let's dive right in with our first hero pack, and that is Black Widow. She comes with two allies, Agent Coulson and Quake. Quake, she's a fine ally. She makes a lot of builds just because of her cheap costs. Come out, do something, and chump block. But Coulson is one that I want to spend some time focusing on because he combos really well with preparation cards because he adds a preparation card to your hand when he enters the game. So essentially, makes him a 2-cost ally to come out and thwart for 4 over 2 rounds and then chump block or potentially thwart for 6. A lot of value there. A lot of goodness that can come from Coulson. But maybe most importantly, let's flip over to our key cards, is this first card right here, and that's Spycraft. The Coulson Spycraft combo has saved my butt so many times in solo from Shadows of the Past. Shadows of the Past is one of the worst cards in the deck. There are some that are probably worse at this point, but there are some heroes where they just do not want to see their nemesis come out because it just puts a side scheme out and this huge beefy ally, minion in a lot of regards, and just giving you 2 inner counter cards for the price of 1, and on top of that, stacking the deck that's going to hurt you long term. Ooh. Better off not to have it. And Spycraft, a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people don't see the usefulness to it. And I get it. I understand their complaints. But for me, having that card there is a, oh crap, I'm about to get my nemesis. Or more importantly, oh crap, I'm about to get attacked and I'm going to die. This could save you in a pinch just to keep you. Because how many times have you been in a situation where you're like, as long as he doesn't scheme a second time, we're fine. Or something like that. And then Spycraft can potentially protect you from that, even though you're still going to get another encounter card on top of that. But for me, Spycraft, super solid, but particularly because it can combo with the Spy character, that is Coulson, because most people can't run this on their own. So let's look at some of the other key cards in the pack. Target acquired is one of the ways that you can deal with boost abilities. It's one of the few ways you can, and this pack, and this card is just growing in usefulness as we get more and more nasty boost abilities coming to the game. Counterintelligence is basically saves you from flipping or your main scheme popping because it stops 3 threat from going on. So a lot of times that's a card that just stays on the table and waits for the right moment. And then rapid response is really a great card to build around in leadership, and a lot of people say this card's broken or OP or just bananas good because you get that interplay ability on the ally when they come back into play. So thank you, Nick Fury, for going out there, chump blocking, rapid response you back into play, draw 3 cards, and then we chump block for our friend on top of that. Yes, so there are a lot of cool combos like that in the game with rapid response. Next, some honorable mentions. Counterattack, pretty good aggression card, but honestly, if I'm being real with you, if I'm not getting at least probably 4 out of that card, I feel like it's a waste. But most of the time, it's a way for you to bait the villain into building up a huge attack against you so that you can beat him up with this counterattack. But there's some heroes can't take those kinds of hits, so it's kind of becomes tricky of who do you want to throw this in with. So defensive stance is basically a card that protects you from 3. There's better cards that protect you in the game than this one, but this one in particular is one that can just stay on the board and protect you from one of those oh crap moments where he boosts for 3 or even 4 at this point. So there are some nasty boosts that can come out. So that's the oh crap card, if you will. Stealth Strike, fun way to deal damage. In particular, it can deal damage and remove threat, so makes it useful in a Justice build who generally doesn't have a lot of ways to deal damage. And Quinn Carrier generating that wild resource for Avenger characters is super solid as well. So we rate this A. I love it. I love this pack. The Coulson Spycraft combo might be the thing that makes me want to make this S tier. But all the other cards are solid and make me love this pack. So this is very much pushing and touching that S tier. But when I started to evaluate, you know what? You could probably live without some of these cards. The Spycraft Coulson combo, you could probably not have that combo and be okay. But for me, I love this pack. And really, it's pushing and it's touching that S tier for me. Next, we have Scarlet Witch, which comes with Wiccan and Speed. Wiccan, I love him. He has tremendous upside being able to deal damage when he thwarts. And most of the time, I actually draw a 0 boost icon when I use him. But, hey, he's a cheap ally, so if he didn't do anything else but come out and chump block for you, he's probably worth it. But with the upside being he could deal upwards of 6-9 damage and thwart for 3, yeah, that's pretty good. Speed is one of those guys that doesn't make the deck building a lot, but he does have a ton of value because if you get him in play and you think of it this way, every first aid in my deck now becomes 4 thwart because he can thwart twice in a single turn. So if you think about that, you're like, okay, well, there definitely is some value there in deck building, but again, doesn't make a lot of decks because of his cost. Next, we have Multitasking, Turn the Tide, Spiritual Meditation. Multitasking is one of my favorite thwart cards in the game because having multiple side schemes on the board and not knowing how to deal with them, and this guy can just come out and like, up 2 from there, 2 from there. 1 cost to remove 4 threat is a lot more valuable than 2 cost for 4 threat on a single one in some regards, because it definitely can set up some neat combos. In particular, Miss Marvel loves this card because she can thwart for 4 from 2 when she uses a mental resource. Then you got Turn the Tide, deals 3 damage when you're thwarting, which is mainly what you're going to be doing anyway, so 0 cost 3 damage. That's good value. There's not a ton of cards that give you 3 damage in this game for 0 cost, and that's pretty good, especially for a Justice hero. Then with Spiritual Meditation, again, this only works with Mystics, but pretty much you're going to be running these cards in every Mystic deck because it just creates card draw. It allows you to see more cards, and more cards you see, the more options you have, and so Spiritual Meditation makes the list most of the time. I can't imagine a Mystic deck without it at this point. So you definitely want to be including that with your Mystics. Then we got some honorable mention. Crisis Averted. It's all right. It's 6 damage removed. Can avoid Crisis icons. It's okay. But honestly doesn't make a lot. Then you got these cards that cause the villain to activate. The Swift Retribution causes him to scheme. And Bait and Switch causes him to attack. These are niche cards in particular builds where you're trying to do something or you're trying to combo off something. Bait and Switch, I think, has more play and more value because Drax wants to be attacked, Spider-Man wants to be attacked. There might be some other scenarios where you really just need a card to do some thwarting, and Protection has ways to deal with the damage that they can take from that extra activation. But ultimately, Swift Retribution, I don't see that card being useful at all because scheming is just so bad in this game. Unless you're using it literally to deal the last 4 damage to win the game or something, or the villain is confused, so maybe you're running a confuse lock strategy. I don't know. I just have a tough time playing that card. Browbeat, there's a lot of cards that do something similar to that, but it does have some value there, especially if you're playing on Expert. But generally speaking, it's a card. There's just better cards out there, in my opinion, that do similar things. And then you got Last Stand, dealing 3 damage for 0. That's pretty solid, but you have to lose an ally. And most of the time, I'm using my allies to block that last bit of damage and not to just go away. So it's very niche and very, very specific what you want to do. I'm not saying it's a bad card because I've definitely used it, but again, those are some niche builds. So ultimately, this is a B for me. I like it, particularly liking Wiccan, liking Multitasking, Spiritual Meditation, and Turn the Tide. Just they're good, but there are ways around it. There's ways to build without those cards. But so that makes it fall to just a like it status for me. Unless Doctor Strange is your favorite character and then yeah, you need this pack so that you can get spiritual meditation. So this falls into like it. I bumped it up from niche just a little bit because there are some things in here that are niche for specific builds. But hey, the multitasking card and just a 2-cost ally on its own bumps it up. So next we have Venom. And he comes with 2 allies, Jack Flagg and Star-Lord. And I'm just going to be real with you. These allies are not great. They're not bad, but they're just not great. They're not going to make a lot of builds for me. Jack Flagg is like a glorified Guardian version of something that Daredevil is already doing. He does it a little bit better, but it takes him a little bit longer to do what Daredevil's doing. So ultimately, I'm probably going to be including Daredevils more so than I'm going to be including Jack Flagg, unless I'm trying to do a Guardian build or something. And then Star-Lord, unless you're building and planning on keeping him on the board, he's really not worth that extra encounter card most of the time. But there are some maybe ways to build him where you can boost up his stats and keep him on the board if that's a strategy. But again, there's not a lot of deck building options, and there's other allies in the game that can do it better without causing you to get an encounter card. So the key cards in this pack, Sonic Rifle is phenomenal. Just being able to have Confuse on a stick. So you're looking at a 3-cost card that can confuse twice. So if you confuse the villain twice, and there's a lot of villains that have at least 2 scheme value. So 2 scheme, and they get a 2 for boost. Those times, you're probably, the average is probably around 6 to 8 threat prevented. Now that's a lot better than taken off. That's 6 to 8 threat prevented with this Confuse. Just really opening up the card pool and the deck building options, being able to get to Alter Ego, because there's very few ways that we can confuse villains in this game outside of just certain heroes seem to do it better in their hero kits. But this gives the confusion ability to every hero in the game. So I love this card and has really made a lot of decks just because of that. Then we have Making the Entrance, which is a way to heal when you're in hero form for a Justice player. And sometimes you get stuck up there because there's just too much threat on the board, and you have to be taking care of some of those things, so you can't get down to Alter Ego for whatever reason, and you can heal in the process, so that's great. So maybe that saves you a recovery activation. So good value. At its worst, it's 1 cost for 2 thwart. So that's not bad value in and of itself, but it has the upside of healing as well. Side holster, love this card, but certain heroes love it more than others. But for me, I love this card because I like weapons and adding weapons to deck. But more importantly, this card is the perfect target for Caught Off Guard. It is also the perfect target for one of those Infinity Stones. I think it's the Reality Stone that takes stuff away. It's also a great card to thin your deck with so that you can make your deck more efficient. A 0-cost upgrade card that stays on the board makes this card phenomenal. Love this card. And on top of that, there's some neat combos that you can make with that. So you can get more weapons out. And there's certain heroes that have some weapons like Rocket who might want to combo with that kind of strategy. So let's look at the honorable mention cards. Fusillade, that's fine. 2 costs for 5 damage. You got to have a weapon, though. That's a fine card to be adding to the pool. Shake It Off, giving you a tough for cheap, but you got to be a Guardian. That's a fun card. Welcome Aboard, fun card, because specifically you can help your friends pay for cards. So that's what makes this card good. Hero action, reduce the card of the next ally played this turn by 2. There's better ways to pay for allies, so a lot of times I'm not going to be including this, but in a multiplayer game, it does make it useful and makes you kind of a cool leadership player because you can help other people pay for cards. And there's really just not a lot of cards in the card pool that help you pay for other people's cards. Plasma Pistol. Probably not the greatest of cards, but there's cool combos that come with it. And so you got to be thinking about that. It's a trigger for Fusillade. It's also not an attack when you shoot it, so it's an easy way to avoid retaliate. You can ping some tough off in a pinch. But it's also a tech, so it can help certain heroes who need those tech, like it's Rocket or Iron Man. So I like this card. I'm glad it's in the card pool, and I think there's some value to be had in it, and it can make decks and be okay. It's not the worst card in there, but we also have Resourceful, which is a repeat from another pack. Wild Resources, and I do think Wild Resources combo really well with Venom and what he's trying to do, but Wild Resources are always useful because you get in these little spots where you have to remove attachment, and always having the right resource to trigger an ability or to remove an attachment that's either on you or on the villain is very helpful. So what do I rate this? I give it an A. And again, this is another one that's pushing that S tier because of the sonic rifle. But what really kind of hurts this pack is the allies. The allies are pretty much, they're not worthless, but you're perfectly fine without these. But it has a lot of fun cards in here and some usefulness to it. So it definitely bumps it up to an A, especially with some of those bonus cards in the back. And the sidearm and really just makes Rocket good. And so if you like Rocket, a lot of people may not have Rocket because they skipped that box, but really makes Rocket good and useful, where you can have 3 of his guns on the board firing all at the same time, which is neat. So that's my thoughts on Venom. Next, we have Nebula. Nebula right here comes with 4 allies. Yes, 4 allies. That is amazing in and of itself. But on top of that, they are 4 very useful allies. Wraith can control boost effects. Venom has upside that if you can keep the threat off the main scheme, he has tremendous value. Now, generally, it's probably going to be a 2-player or a solo game that he's the most useful. But even still, just that value you can get out of him, or if you can get a tough card on him, yes. Really some cool ways to find value in Venom. So he brings a lot to the Justice build. Then we have Eros. Just the fact that he's 2 cost and thwart for 2. Huge value there, but on top of that, maybe he can confuse a minion that you need confused this round. So that's good. And then Cosmo, it's a repeat from the Star-Lord pack, but Cosmo is also a card that it makes a lot of decks just because he's 2 cost and he's a basic, so he can interplay. And there's a tremendous upside if you can get some maybe upgrades on him or something where he can continue to attack and not take consequential damage if you have a reliable way to see the next card on a particular deck. So, key cards in this pack, Honorary Guardian. This was necessary to the card pool. It needed to be there. We have so many Guardian characters, and we have so many times we want to make certain allies Guardians so that we can do some cool stuff with or create Guardian builds. One way or another, this card has been voted several times as one of the best cards, if not the best card in the Justice build. Being able to draw 3 cards when you bring out a side scheme allows you to build a board state quicker, allows you to trigger some things that combo off of side schemes like Skilled Investigator and Followed. So really solid card here, and is going to be making a ton of builds. Justice Served is cool because it's a readying effect, and if you are a Justice player, you're going to be wanting to remove all the threat on schemes anyways, and this readying effect gives you the ability to stand back up and do some more thwarting or maybe even attacking depending on what needs to be done in that moment. So that is cool. And it triggers off a thwart. So you can be exhausted because of an ability that happened during the encounter phase and then play like multitasking or for justice or something that readies your hero if you remove all the threat. So cool combos there. And it can really combo because you can only have 1 on the board at a time. You thwart, you play Justice Served, it gets discarded, you play another Justice Served, you exhaust your hero to thwart another side scheme off the board, readying yourself again with another Justice Served, and then doing more threat removal, or attacking. So this card definitely has some play, definitely has some combos that can be built off of that. And then we have the Energy Spear, the quintessential upgrade for allies in the aggression build. This card, even if it had just given you +2 attack for an ally, it would have been worth it. But on top of that, it gains piercing so that you don't have to worry with stupid tough minions or stupid tough villains. You can pierce right through that tough and deal extra damage on top of that. This card has tremendous amount of play and has become one of the favorites in deck building aggression. We got some honorable mentions. Guardians of the Galaxy gives you some card draw if you're all Guardians. That's fun. Defensive training can make some builds that are focused around having the right defense cards and protection event cards coming back around. Brains over Brawn, it has some play, but honestly, I don't love this card because you're looking at 2 costs to most of the time do 3 to maybe 4 damage. It's okay. And that's if you can get your thwart stat buffed enough. So it's not that it doesn't have play. It's just most of the time there's better options out there. And then we have Nowhere, which is, again, a solid card, but it's a repeat from another pack. Card draw available, but also increasing your ally limit. So overall, I give this an S. Yes, this is an S. This is a gotta have it pack. There's just so many cards from the allies to one way or another to Honorary Guardian. This pack brings the heat, brings the value, and brings a lot of deck building options to the game. So Nebula is got to be one of the first buys if you love the Justice aspect. And even if you don't love the Justice aspect, there's just other cards in here that make it good as well. So Nebula is a great pack to be adding to your collection, even if you care nothing about the Nebula character yourself. So we go to the ranking here. I would say Nebula's number 1. As much as I love Black Widow and that Coulson Spycraft combo, Nebula just has more deck building within the pack. Black Widow's next because, again, the combo of the Coulson Spycraft combo is super cool to me. Venom, again, is an A because of that sonic rifle mainly. And then finally Scarlet Witch. There's just not cards in there you probably couldn't live without. But it definitely has some cool cards, particularly if you're playing Mystic with Spiritual Meditation. And Turn the Tide makes a bunch of builds as well. And the allies are okay. Wiccan's good and Speed is fine. So that's my breakdown. That's what I think. Let me know what you think.